Before starting the endgame, you need to be sure that you already have a good knowledge and success in the initial two parts of the game, opening and a middle game. Some people are really like to learn the endgame, but we should not ignore the fact the position that you're going to get in the endgame really depends how well you do in the opening and the middle game stage. As you know, the endgame is the third part of the game, and if you don't have enough knowledge on the two initial stages, first I would recommend you to work on them and after that improve your endgame skills. In this video, I'm going to share you 10 principles for the endgame part, so once you learn them, you can do your best in the third part of the game. If you are ready, let's go. The first principle stands for, whenever possible, try to create a pass pawn. This really works well when you're having a pawn endgame, and as you know, the pass pawn is a pawn that your opponent doesn't have any kind of pawns to stop it, and at the same time, this pass pawn, it could be a really like a dangerous weapon, since once it gets promoted, it can cause a lot of headache to your opponent. In the endgame, many wins are based on the opposition. Opposition is basically the situation when your kings are facing each other and there's only one free space between them. Usually, opposition really works well when you're having the pawn endgame, and in order to that, you sometimes you bring the king in front of the pawn. Opposition is really definitely the key thing, but the most important thing is that it's whose turn in the opposition. If it's your opponent's turn, congratulations, you are winning that game. But unfortunately, if it's your turn, just know you are losing, or even in a winning position, you have an extra pawn, the position is draw. Principle number 3, centralize your king as soon as possible. Let's face it, in the opening and the middle game stage, definitely the king that the piece that we worry about and take care of it, but when it comes to endgame, it is completely different. Kings actually becomes much more valuable and dangerous. And the main reason why we need to centralize the king, because once the kings get in the center, it will be much faster to move the side where it's most needed. You want to go to the queen side, you are very near to it, or you're the king side, again you are close to it and you can get it much more faster from a central perspective. Sometimes you can end up having the minor piece endgame, such as like a 2 bishops versus bishop and knight. What you should do in these sort of situations. If you own 2 pair of bishops and if they're already active, then now it's time that you must concentrate limiting the range of the enemy knight. Here, if it was a black turn, he wants to get knight f6. And we are playing g5, that simply restricts our knight to get the freedom on f6. And knight can jump to g7, which now it is also clear that where knight wants to come, to f5 and h5. And again, we can limit the knight's range to getting here by just pushing our pawn to g4. Principle number 5. Opposite colored bishops usually ends with a draw. And the main reason for that is that when you have the opposite colored bishops, basically here you can see white has complete control over dark squares, but cannot do anything on the light spots. But for the black, it's the same scenario. Can do anything he wants on the light squares, but completely cannot do nothing on the dark squares. Since the bishop can attack on the spots that other one is defending, it's usually ends with a draw. We keep going, and now it's time for principle number 6. Wing pawns are very strong against knights. Actually, in the endgame part, knights usually have a very hard time stopping a pass pawn, but it gets even tougher when that pass pawn is a rook pawn, whether h or a pawns. And the main reason for that, the knights have more restricted movements close to like the corners. Here you can see knight is only able to jump only on these 2 squares, but once bishop moves to d4 and king gets there, even the movement of the knights also finishes. Principle number 7. Knights are superior to bishops in the endgame if all the pawns are on the one side of the board. The main reason for that, the bishop's long range powers have no longer meaning, while the knight's ability to get either color square means that there is no safe haven for the enemy king or pawns. And simply here knight can jump on f5, which is putting the pressure on h6. And since bishop cannot do anything in the current situation, the position is already losing for black. Principle number 8. Place your rook behind your passed pawns. The main idea putting your rook behind the passed pawn would be, first of all, your rook will get way more like active when it's a behind passed pawn. Not only defending your own pawn, but at the same time sometimes you can attack your opponent's pawns as well. Even if you don't know anything about the rook endgame, just follow this one key thing and it can help you to perform better. And that stands for whenever you got the chance, cut off your opponent's king. In the current situation, you can see is that we got the passed pawn. By just cutting off the king, you can see if the black's king cannot get even close to our passed pawn. And simply here, white can just advance his passed pawn with the help of his king, and this pawn can get simply promoted. And here kind of weird question comes up once you cut off the king. Does that king really exist? And the final 10th principle goes for centralize your queen. Queen is kind of like the king in the beginning of the game, you should not expose it. But after some trading, it would be the best decision to centralize it and your queen reaches its maximum potential. Also, by centralizing your queen, you may be able to control over more spaces and at the same time, not let your opponent's queen occupy them.